Hi, welcome back to the Big Six. It's a Thursday morning in March. I've not been up for a couple of days. I've been on my day job, but it's a busy Thursday up here. Quite a few admin tasks to do, and then I have a meeting this afternoon. First job obviously is putting the kettle on. So I'm going to make a brew, and then I'm going to be upstairs doing some things in the office. I started off this morning down in the town centre. First thing in the morning in Halifax. Most of our payments these days are by card, but every now and again I do need to get some change, so that's the first job of the day. Right, so that's done. Post office nice and quiet. I have to do all the banking through the post office these days. So I've got my change. I'm going to head up to the pub and get that sorted out in the office. So £2.50 for 10 minutes parking. Right, head up to the pub. Do see quite a bit of online debate about cash in pubs. From an administrative point of view, card payments work so much better for me. We use the Dojo card payment machine, card payment system. Not cheap, but I don't think any of the card payment services are cheap, because I do get 2 or 3 phone calls a week from people trying to sell me their particular card payment system. People still want to use cash, and the Big Six will continue to be a cash-friendly pub. Right, that's invoices done, office jobs done. I do like to pay invoices as soon as I can. A lot of the breweries that we use are small businesses as well. We all like to get paid on time, and also it stops me forgetting. Whereas if I just pay all the deliveries, pay all the invoices when beer gets delivered, it makes life a bit easier. Just adding some more bric-a-brac to the shelves. We do have a lot of bric-a-brac at the Big Six. This one, for example, Whittaker & Sons, they were a brewery in Halifax. But here, this is a bottle from the original Big Six bottling company. A mineral water company that was on the site originally before the pub came along, and from where the Big Six got its name. So it's nice to have all this stuff, but it doesn't half gather dust. So a couple of times a year we will take everything down off the shelves, give it all a good dust, good wipe down, dust all the shelves down and put them back. But yeah, with the amount of stuff that we have, and still keep acquiring, yeah, that's quite a big job to do. So the big sixth form, what's that all about? Well, just across the road from the pub is the Crossley Heath School. It was the Crossley and Porter School when I went there in 1982. And then it merged with the Heath Grammar School in 1985. And for years and years and years and years and years, the sixth form have had a long connection with the pub, because sixth formers would come across to the pub sometimes during school hours, quite often afterwards, and then a big tradition was on the last day of school. The last day of upper sixth, as it was. I don't know what that is in the new terminology of years, but when we finished upper sixth, we left school for study leave before our A-levels. It was a long tradition that the sixth form would pile across to the Big Six on Friday lunchtime and spend the afternoon in the pub. But in my time, I left school in 1989, attitudes towards underage drinking were a little bit more flexible, but certainly it was quite obvious that on that particular Friday afternoon in May, June, whenever it was, that the beer garden and the pub were full of sixth formers. David and I met at school in the mid-80s, and we were part of that sixth form tradition. That's me, and that's David, This is our sixth form photograph from 1989. We've also been given some photographs from the school from years gone by. And then this was my photo. This was a Crossley and Porter School final ever whole school photo, May 1985, as the school merged with Heath. The Big Six is down this street here, so you can see just how close we are to the school. On the dusty memorabilia shelf is my blazer badge from the old Crossley and Porter School, and I've even got some postcards there from days gone by of the school. It was actually built as an orphanage by the Crossley family. It was known as the Crossley Orphanage. The Crossleys owned the Dean Clough mill complex in the town, which I'm led to believe that at the time, or at its peak, it was the world's largest carpet mill. Absolutely massive complex down at the bottom of town. Also behind the bar is my school tie, complete with stitched in name labels. This is the tie from the Crossley and Porter School. So from 1982, I remember my mother spending hours stitching embroidered name labels into all the bits of school uniform, which had cost an absolute fortune to buy at the time. More significant though is this tie. This tie has been behind the bar since 1989. So when David and I came across on our last day of school with the rest, with a large portion of the rest of the sixth form, it was a baking hot Friday afternoon. Quite a few beers were drunk. Tetley ale at the time, fabulous pints of Tetleys that this pub used to serve. David gave the tie to Duncan Shaw, who was the landlord at the time. He hung it behind the bar in 1989, and it is still there 35 years later. Goodness knows how much dust and cigarette smoke that tie has absorbed over the years, but I'm not touching it. Like the ravens leaving the tower or the monkeys leaving the Rock of Gibraltar, I'm scared of the consequences of what would happen if I took that tie down and gave it a wash. Not that I'm superstitious, but it's done 35 years, it still survived. So we'll just leave things as they are, because that's what we do at the Big Six. We leave things just as they are. Back in those days, in the late 80s, David and I would come across here, especially on a Friday lunchtime. I think we had a free period, first lesson after lunch on a Friday. So we would quite often come in here at lunchtime and have a pint or two. Didn't get drunk, but we did have a pint or two at lunchtime before heading back across to school. I mean, it's just unthinkable that we got away with it, and teachers at the time quite often knew that members of the sixth form were doing that. But we'd also come up here in the evenings, and this was the first sort of proper pub that we ever came to. And we'd sit in this corner, in the snug, and talk to the regulars at lunchtime. Same pictures on the wall. In the corner over there would sit a chap called Michael Jackson. He was the caretaker over at the school, and he came in every single lunchtime. We were still quite astonished then at how somebody could drink 4 or 5 pints at lunchtime and then go back and do some work, but his excuse was always that he could get more work done when everybody had gone, so he had a very extended lunchtime but worked later into the night. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. Next to Michael, next to the fire, would often be a chap who was called Bendy Fred. Now, I have no idea how Bendy Fred got his name. And then a regular on this table here was a chap called Edgar. Big old school chap, big old school Yorkshireman. On this side of the snug, was a chap called I think he was called David, and he wasn't here all the time, but he would sit, he would always have halves with a whiskey chaser, a copy of the Daily Telegraph folded up into quarters, whilst he rattled off the crossword. Now this chap lived or worked in Indonesia, which at the time just seemed impossibly glamorous that these people were flying all over the world doing this kind of work. So he sort of was part of the lunchtime crowd, but he did keep himself to himself over in this corner here. But very interesting chap he was. And it was here that we just learnt all these stories. Now, I'm not sure how much truth there was in some of them, but they were fascinating to listen to. Really interesting characters that had done, that had sort of quite interesting lives. And it was here that we sort of learned about the pub as a community place, with all kinds of characters that came in, and also where we got our love of Tetley Bitter. So in the late 80s there wasn't this range of beer on the bar. The Big Six was a Tetley pub. Tetley brewed in Leeds until, was it about 2007, 2008 that the brewery closed, but the original Tetleys had long gone by then. It hadn't tasted the same for years. But in the Big Six you drank Tetleys, but that was fine, that was all that there was. But it didn't matter, because the Tetley that was served in Halifax in the late 80s, early 90s was absolutely delicious. I do remember at one point Burton, I think it was Burton Ale, came on as an early experiment in guest beers. I don't know if it was significantly stronger or what. I'd have to look it up. But we referred to it at the time as a Burton head. If you'd switched from the Tetley to the Burton, you certainly knew about it the next day. Those good old days of Tetleys, long gone. David and I do have jobs and careers outside of the pub. I retrained in the mid-2000s as a paramedic, worked for Yorkshire Ambulance Service, and then worked overseas for a few years. And I work now in Manchester. And David, he founded a technology company initially in Las Vegas, but they're now based in Canada. Started it from scratch about 15 years ago, and it's done quite well. And he's keen to give opportunities to kids from Halifax, young people from Halifax, young people from Crossley's, who are interested in careers in the technology sector. One of the things that we do is give a donation to the school each year to help with that. And so the head teacher is new at the school, and he's keen to just have a quick little meet up and see what we're all about. So jokingly we did talk about sponsoring the Big Sixth Form, sponsoring the sixth form, calling it the Big Sixth Form, but that was just a joke. But we're not seeing young people come into the pub in the same way from the school like they used to. Now, whether that's just young people are not drinking in the same way that we did when we were younger. We were desperate to get out and go to the pub. I mean, there were only 4 TV channels. That's what you wanted to do. That was the only way that you could meet your friends, really, was to go out, meet up at the pub. Young people just don't seem to be as keen, or not all of them seem to be as keen to do that anymore. But I think also perhaps a big difference over at the school is that at one time it was for kids from Halifax. It's since we left, it's now, I don't know what the title is, but you make an application, you apply to the school. So there are children, young people coming to the school from all over the place these days. So maybe there just isn't that sort of local connection that there once was, which is a shame, really. And also, I think the competition, if that's the right word, for sixth form is much more than it was when we were in the sixth form. It was sort of assumed that, you know, you did your O-levels, and if you were staying on at school, you just stayed on at the same school, sixth form, whereas there are other choices now, other colleges and other sixth forms available. So I think maybe the days of going to school with somebody, you know, you all join school at 11 and stay there till you're 18 are long gone. People make different choices and go to different places. But it would be nice to see some young people coming into the Big Six. And I'm just going to go and get some lunch before I go across the school for this meeting. But I'll have a quick look down the cellar. Looks like we've had a delivery. Ainsty Ales, they're a brewery from York, the York area, that we experimented with just before Christmas. Very, very popular. Really good beers. And a really nice guy to deal with. I think we are the only people in the area that do actually stock his ales, so I'll get that delivery put away. Otherwise, the cellar's all looking good. We've reconfigured things a little. So instead of having all the old mill on the top, we've split it. So we've got old mill and strong. And then as the most popular pump is the session ale, we've decided to rack more of those, given the turnover of those can be much faster. And down here, all looking good. Line cleaning day yesterday, so the floor is still wet from being hosed down, but all looking good in the cellar. And another invoice to pay. Right, so time to head across to the school. So this is Horsfall Street, so the actual address of the pub. This is Spring Edge. Down there is Thomas Street West, so you can approach the pub from 2 streets, which I guess is probably quite unusual. And then just across, within spitting distance, is the school. It's going to be a bit strange, this, going back here for the first time in 35 years. So this area here is known as Savile Park. Well, this whole sort of area of Halifax is known as Savile Park, and this is the parkland itself, which I believe is common land that was given by the Savile family, and it has to remain as it is. And then there in the distance is the school through the trees. Looks like it's lunchtime. Lots of noise over there at the minute. So when we were at the school, cross country was running around this area of ground. I think they used to say it was about a mile all the way around, but pretty brutal in the winter with the wind blowing in off the hills and then pulling up the hill on that far side for the last little bit. Yeah, it not enormously enjoyable as a 11-12-year-old doing that for the first time. And then it was here that we would have to play rugby. Absolutely no football in those days, it was rugby. Rugby union at that, even though Halifax is a bit of a rugby league town. As a traditional old grammar school, we had to play rugby union. Many miserable afternoons, freezing to death in the cold and the mud, getting hammered by the bigger boys. Even though I was quite a big boy at the time, I was useless at rugby and incredibly short-sighted, so I couldn't see a damn thing anyway. But much as I love rugby now as an armchair supporter, absolutely hated playing it. It's not a bad location for a school though, imposing position on the top of the hill. So as you can see, it's a hugely impressive building, built as a Victorian orphanage that then evolved into a school. Be interesting to see if anything's changed inside. That's the old lodge. That was home of the caretaker Michael Jackson back in our day. I don't know if that still is the case, that the caretaker gets property on the premises. Used to be a grass tennis court down there, but that's long gone. So all done at the school, been there about an hour. The head teacher was very generous with his time, gave me a tour, got to have a look at the old classrooms. Things haven't changed that much inside really. And then we've had a chat about what the Big Six can do to help with some projects that they've got on the go. So been there, yeah, about an hour. It's time to head the short distance across to the pub, and I'm going to hang around at tea time, so just make sure everything's ready, that we're all set up to open at 4 o'clock. So back in, I think we're all set up. Today we've got going on the Hawk's Head Itty, Salopian Valley of the Shadow, the Dark Pump, Millstone Citra and Small World Twin Falls. It's only about 2:30, so I'm not going to light the fire just yet. I was down in the cellar earlier, so I know that that's all under control. One thing I will do while I've got time, I've noticed that the wholesalers didn't have any Guinness Zero in stock. We've got some and a few in the fridge, but I shall nip up to the cash and carry, see if they've got any up there. Right, so there's no Guinness Zero at the cash and carry either, which is a bit of a shame. I shall try tomorrow or on Saturday. I've dumped the car today, walking back up to the pub, because I might have a beer this evening. So I've been in and out since about 9:30 this morning, so I know most things are all under control. What I do need to do is light the fire. Not as cold as it has been, but it's about 12 degrees outside, but there's no central heating in the pub, so the fire is needed just to take the chill off. Just put some coal on as well. Right, that's going nicely, all being well. I'm not the most successful of fire lighters, but what I will do while it's quiet is pop down to the cellar and get some more coal. So this is our other cellar. This is the coal cellar, and this really is an old Victorian cellar. Still got a mangle down here, but in the corner we have the coal store. Stocks are getting a bit low. It's still only the middle of March, so we've still got plenty of cold days ahead, so I think we might need to make another order. So the fire's going, it's 3:45, we'll open up in a few minutes time. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've been really blown away by the interest in the videos. But my subscriber numbers are only tiny, so there are a lot of people watching these videos that aren't subscribed. So please consider subscribing. It'll help the channel to grow, encourage the channel to grow. And if there's anything that you would like to know that I haven't covered about the pub, any ideas, please let me know in the comments. There's only a certain amount of times I can show you the cellar and line cleaning, that kind of thing. So if you're interested in pubs and you want to know a bit more, by all means let me know. But I'm going to call it a day here. I'm going to open at 4 and then I'm going to have a beer later on. Quality control is obviously an important part of running a pub. And then I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Take care.